Hello everyone, back with another story from the archives, and this story is from my ebook of erotic stories I have on Amazon. It's called Swingtown and Other Stories. It's a compilation of just stories that I hadn't got published, and some that were. Los Hermanos from Seriously Sexy 2. Was it 3? Seriously Sexy 3. Los Hermanos is on there. Ultimate Decadence's Sweet Like Chocolate, which we've read out as well. And my story from the Excite Book collection, Girlfriend 1, which I haven't read out yet. This is a story called The Bookstore, and like most of my stories, it's from the point of view of a woman, and I don't know, for some reason I just like writing female characters and writing as a woman, and this is kind of a tribute to the bookshop I worked in for many years, and yeah, so it's called The Bookstore. Sure, I know someone that can help you, I heard my colleague say from across the bookstore. Familiar steps quickened towards me as I was on my hands and knees trying to fix the shelf that normally held the Philippa Gregorys and John Grishams together in one best-selling melee. It had come loose earlier in the day when someone had tried pulling out a jammed copy of The Firm, creating a crashing display of tumbling novels over a bemused customer. As you would expect, both of them just walked away from the mess without a care. There's a lady that would like some recommendations from your genre. My genre or area of speciality is erotic fiction. I rarely get asked about it, and when I do, I am duly approached by an embarrassed member of staff, accompanied by an equally red-faced customer looking anywhere apart from at me during the whole process, except for once in this instance. Personally, I'd be more ashamed if my area of expertise was gardening or something geeky like indoor games favoured by the Sudoku and bridge enthusiasts in the shop, but there you go. I actually like gardening, and had often tended to the small patch at my former marital home in Wimbledon, but as a consequence of my upcoming divorce, the urge to be green-figured had left me cold. Unless you count the herb garden sitting on the windowsill of my Bayswater flat, that is. One day, and without any warning, my husband announced quite matter-of-factly that he was leaving me and moving in with the lawsuit from Basingstoke. They met in Tesco's at the wet fish counter when they were both buying half a pound of cod roe. That man is nothing but class. Sure, no problem, I said, dusting myself off as my workmates scuttled away. I stood and adjusted my black shirt and trousers as I smiled at the stranger in front of me. The woman snapped shut her mobile and looked down her shades at me, cocking her head to one side. Can I help you? I said, noticing her taut frame, while smoothing down my pants over my shapely thighs, desperately hoping to slim them down by doing so. Yes, she clipped. I'm after a lesbian anthology for a friend. All right, I said, faking nonchalance. I walked past her, brushing against her ever so slightly, which was unavoidable in the confined space between the shelves. Little shivers ran up my spine as her gaze never left my generous arse, but when I noticed she wasn't following me, I paused. Gosh, I wasn't used to such a forthright and confident customer, let alone one who looked at me like that. I put it down to her privileged demeanour that allowed her the freedom of behaving however she felt. I turned and said, It's this way. Oh, she grunted, rolling her eyes. I led her to a secluded corner where the erotic fiction was situated. It was discreetly behind the area we had reserved for major prize winners. I've always found it funny whenever a customer accidentally found themselves in this private collection while searching for Salman Rushdie. They would look to see if anyone had noticed and wouldn't rush out either. I personally categorised the section by separating the novels from the compilations and organised it: gay, lesbian, swingers, transgender, miscellaneous, I ran my hand surreptitiously along the shelves and pulled out a recent collection of reprints from the Victorian era. I hadn't read it, but it had stuck in my mind because we had sold a reasonable amount. I handed her the thick grey paperback and announced with a flourish, "There you go." "Have you read it?" she asked me. "No, I haven't, but it looks quite, well, you know, and it's very popular too." "Ah, you think," she mused, her icy exterior almost melting in front of me. "Yeah, they did a straight collection that was quite good. I read that." She nodded along curiously. For a second she blatantly stared at my breasts before she righted herself and started flicking through the book. She was all skin-tight Dolce & Gabbana jeans, clunky European jewellery, a slightly frilly top and a ridiculous-looking handbag that probably cost more than I was paid in a month. She was thin with perky breasts and a mountain of conditioned curly brown hair. I'd never been with a woman before, but I always fantasized about it. Their bodies are just more sensual than men's bodies tend to be most of the time. I wasn't sure at this point if this girl was my type, but her arrogance was turning me on. She definitely knew what she wanted, and I bet she could get it at any time. My ex-husband had been dying to get me into bed with Janet, a gay co-worker of his, especially after we had flirted with one another at a Christmas party a couple of years ago. Janet had drunkenly admitted to him that if I ever wanted to dabble in that side of things, she'd happily take my virginity, so to speak, and that he was more than welcome to watch. He nagged me for ages after that, and always ribbed me about it. I was actually warming to the idea and considered setting up a date for the three of us, but he spoiled that when he went fish shopping with Andrea. I always wondered that if I consented soon, whether we would still be together. I sighed to myself and left my customer to her browsing. Her attitude intimidated me, and there was part of me that was relieved to move away. I headed towards a large pile of Dan Brown paperbacks and began to place promotional stickers on the bottom right-hand corner of each one. After a few minutes of doing this, I felt a presence behind me. I turned, and there she was again, smiling sweetly. "I'm going to take your advice and get it," she said, putting the book into my hands before I could suggest that she take it to one of my free and available colleagues, idly gossiping between themselves by the birthday cards. "Sure," I said, proffering her towards the till point. "Come with me." "Sure," she sighed as she lifted her fancy handbag onto the counter and rummaged through it, pulling out a handful of receipts and box of panty liners as I ran her purchase through. "So who's the lucky girl then?" I asked politely. They asked us to engage with the customers after all. "I'm sorry," she muttered, momentarily looking up from her distracted search. "The recipient of the book. Girlfriend?" I delved, intrigued. "Well, maybe," she giggled. "It's early days." She found her purse and returned the rest of her stuff back into the bag. "And you?" she wondered, flipping open her purse and looking down at the array of cards. "Well, I'm single, about to be divorced. From a man, though." "Ah," she nodded. She punched a PIN number into the PDQ machine. "Well, maybe you just haven't found the right woman yet." I laughed uneasily, and she joined me. "Maybe I will, who knows?" I noticed my voice rising higher slightly than normal. I caught her eye as I placed her book into her bag. The connection sent a thrill down my throat and entered deep into my cunt. My clit involuntarily throbbed in response, moistening my panties. We stood there for a second, and immediately I sensed my breath shorten. She nervously retrieved her card and scratched her forehead, her sexy blue eyes narrowing. She glanced over at the clock on the wall. It was 4:30 p.m. "Do you get off soon?" she asked. "In an hour or so." "Fancy a cocktail?" "Sure," I said, before I realised what I'd just agreed to. I almost put my hand to my mouth in shock. I don't know what it was about her, but I felt drawn. She stuffed her card into her purse and fumbled for a business card. "Call me when you're ready." She handed it to me, and before I got the chance to look at it, her eyes bored into me. Then she turned on her heels, giving me ample time to admire her tiny firm ass sashay away from me. Left in her wake, I suddenly realised that I had other customers needing attention. There was a stern-looking man with a Trudy Canavan novel and a young girl latched onto his hand. This sobering image did nothing to dispel my pang of lust down below. "Oh my God," I thought, "maybe it will happen after all." The end of my shift could have come quick enough, and when it did, I raced to the bathrooms. My reflection didn't reveal that I was even remotely ready for a possible sexual encounter. especially with an attractive woman at that. It's now or never. I couldn't let this opportunity pass, I thought. I fondled the business card. Sarah Campbell, Chief Executive, Campbell PR. My bravado was fleeting though, and suddenly feeling shy, I opted for a cheeky text instead of calling her. Hey, it was lovely meeting you. I'm just about to leave, but not really dressed for much. Luckily, I have a few things in my locker from a recent night out. Reading it back sounded very tame, so I added, Where would you like me? I pressed send before I could reconsider. Then I frantically rummaged through my locker. A couple of nights previous, it had been a friend's birthday, and I couldn't get out of the early shift the following morning, so I crashed at her place and had gone to work from there wearing sensible working clothes. Unlike the clothes that I had worn to the party, which were still in my locker. How fortunate, I smiled to myself. I pulled out a pair of strappy heels and a short pleated tartan skirt. Not exactly D&G, but she shouldn't protest too much. Just as I had removed my trousers, she called back. Standing in my knickers, we shared some chatter. As I undid the top 2 buttons on my shirt, I slid a hand inside my shaved black bra as we arranged to meet in a trendy bar in Brick Lane. I played with my erect nipples. Her voice made me warm down below. The hustle and bustle of fashionable East London was more than evident as I walked up to the family-run establishment. The smell of steel cans of Stella and coriander filled the streets that were once known for the brutal murder of prostitutes and the plague of thousands of people. The seediness only served to heighten my sense of curiosity. I entered the bar and saw her straight away, sat in a booth. As I walked over to her, she rose and offered me her cheek to kiss. Instead, I kissed her on the mouth. I caught myself and pulled away, looking down at the floor. It was only for a second that I felt myself blush, as I noticed what I had just done. I couldn't explain it, I just felt so relaxed. She seemed to do something to me. She brushed off my embarrassment and jabbed me playfully on the arm, telling me not to worry. Sitting down, we giggled nervously at our previous intimacy. Fancy that cocktail now? Sarah asked. Sure, I'll have whatever you're having, I replied. She strutted up to the bar and was served immediately, despite there being a line of other customers already waiting. They consisted predominantly of bloated middle-aged men and lean younger ones dressed in jeans and well-fitting t-shirts. Every single one of them moved aside, partly in awe, so she could place her order. They may have lost out in some ways, but it also gave them the perfect opportunity to check out her tight arse. Some sacrifices have to be made, it seems. A couple of them gazed at me with smutty smirks on their faces. Men are so juvenile, I decided. Perhaps I've been focusing on the wrong gender all along. She tottered back over with cocktail glasses filled with pink froth and strawberries. She took a sip and moaned before asking, Did you know that when you eat strawberries they make your pussy taste sweeter? I did not know that, I chuckled. You learn something every day. I reached for my drink as she fished the little red fruit from her drink and retorted, Perhaps you should eat mine too then. Unfortunately, I was mid-sip and almost spat out the sweet drink all over her carefully selected outfit and her expensive nail job. Returning composure, I once again faked nonchalance. Oh yeah, come to think of it, I gabbled nervously. I've heard that before. Really? Where? She pushed. I must have read it somewhere, I said, crossing my legs and unknowingly raising my skirt in the process. My gesture didn't go unnoticed and she ogled my fleshy thigh while sipping away. My clit throbbed momentarily again, causing my whole body to slightly jerk. Are you okay? She asked, stroking my thigh with a mischievous look on her face that indicated she knew very well what was going on beneath my skirt. As much fun as being with her was, I was also becoming flustered at the power she had over me. My ex-husband often complained I was a control freak, and that if I only could relax more I would find life more enjoyable. If he could see me now, he'd be wetting himself in delight. Despite being completely engrossed in each other's conversation, a guy slid into the booth next to me. He was one of those good-looking jocks, and the kind that doesn't think he needs to work hard at bedding a woman. Perhaps that was the case a decade ago, but now, with his slight paunch and thinning hair, his charm had faded somewhat. Hey, he grunted. His eloquence is overwhelming, I thought sarcastically. Although by now, with the combination of the alcohol and Sarah's advances, I'm not exactly eloquent myself. What are you two lovely ladies up to then? He asked, noticing Sarah's hand on my knee. Just hanging out, I offered. I can see that, he said, fixated on my new friend's hand. I sipped my drink, all the while pretending everything was normal. He extended his arm across my shoulder. He brushed his fingertips along my arm and said, "You know, a little girl-on-girl action is always fun, but nothing beats a good hard cock." Sarah finally spoke up with, "Oh yeah? And I suppose you have one of those?" "I sure do," he said, clutching his groin. "Interested?" Sarah continued to stroke my thigh and said, "Sure, do you live close by?" "No, I live in Manchester, but my hotel is around the corner." "I'll tell you what, big fella, why don't you head over there now while we finish up?" Obediently jumping to his feet, he said, "It's the Carlton, room 216. "Well, see you there soon," she said, as I stared at her incredulously. Extending his hand to her, he muttered, "By the way, the names—" Sarah interrupted him. "Names are not necessary, and besides, my hands are busy, as you can see." He mumbled something before stumbling over to the door, but not before giving his mates the thumbs up. They looked our way in bemusement, and she shrugged at them like we knew nothing. I pulled away a little from her before saying, "Hang on, Sarah, I'm not sure I want—" She nibbled on my ear and said, "Darling, you don't have to. We're going to stand him up. Teach the bastard." Confused, I asked her, "Teach him? What did he do, though, apart from being an arrogant tosser?" While I was at the bar, he was bragging to his mates that he could bag us. "And darling, if we don't leave soon, I'm going to have to more than play with your thigh." I chuckled, wishing that I had something clever and equally sexy to come back with, but sort of half choking and saying, "Like what?" was all of that I could imagine. "I could finger you right now," she whispered into my ear. I necked the remainder of my drink and pulled my bag onto my lap. I turned to her as brave as I could and smiled. "Your place?" Out onto the street, she led me by the hand to her flat, a couple of blocks away. Our stilettos did nothing to detain our speedy arrival to her elegant Georgian apartment building. We reached our destination and she strode through the lobby confidently. "We'll have to take the stairs as the lift's out." She extended her arm to the heavens, allowing me to go first. I obeyed. With every step, I wiggled my way up. My arse offered her a tantalising tease of what lay beneath my skirt, but she didn't touch me once on our climb, making me long for her fingers to expertly unravel me further. After 2 flights of stairs in complete silence, I raised my skirt a little. "I love watching your big arse," she said. I stopped in my tracks and continued to raise my skirt and bend over for her below me. She rang her fingernails up from my ankles all the way up to my ample bottom. Grabbing my cheeks in her hands, she shook my wobbly flesh before giving me a good hard slap. I let out a slight cry of pain. She slapped me again, and then again, harder and harder again still. I looked back in shock as she grinned naughtily at me. She pulled my panty crotch to one side, and the tips of her fingers brushed the little tuft of hair that I won't allow my beautician to wax off. She slipped in her index finger and pulled it back out straight away, sucking the whole thing with her mouth. I was right about those strawberries. Spreading my cheeks again, she plunged her tongue into my cunt. I squirmed in appreciation until she slapped me again. We somehow staggered up the remaining stairs while we suddenly heard a neighbour's door close with a click. Oh well, that will give them something to talk about. She calmly found her keys and unlocked the door as my hand squeezed her tight, smaller arse. Despite being in awe of her utter coolness, I no longer felt the slightest bit insecure in her presence. All I wanted to do at this point was explore her firm body until we were both spent. She opened the door to a generous passageway. Looking round, I said, "PR must pay well." "Yeah, it's not bad, but I got this in the divorce." "You were married?" I gasped, taken aback. "Well, you know how it is. You meet a nice boy and settle down like you're supposed to, until you realise you don't actually want to be with a nice boy. You want a bad girl instead, like one who bends over for you in a public place, for example." We both collapsed in fits of laughter, and we both peeled off our short jackets. She produced a half-drank bottle of Chablis from the kitchen and walked over to a nearby cabinet for some glasses. She chuckled to herself and shook her head, sneaking a look my way. My chin was resting on my palms and on my knees. I cocked my head to one side and said, "What?" "I never would have guessed." "On what?" I wondered that we'd be here. I was actually quite dreading meeting you. Oh, thanks. She laughed and slinked her way over to me. No, I meant I never imagined it would work out this way. I just thought it would be a dull and awkward night, not a hot night of sex at the end. I tipped her glass playfully as she put it into her mouth, making her spill a few drops onto her cleavage. She looked at me, incredulous, and narrowed her eyes. "You'd better lick that up," she demanded. A shiver went through me and my head bowed. As ordered, I leant forward and lapped up the chilled wine off her warm skin, like cooling pastry in a bakery. She held the back of my head between her boobs as I carried on kissing there, and a hand wandered round her denim-clad hips. Her hand raised my skirt and inspected me. She muttered, very nice." Her fingers were once again stroking my pussy, only this time her fingers explored deeper. "Have you ever been with a woman before?" "No, but I've always wanted to." "I'm beginning to get that impression," she said, still rimming my slippery lips. "I can't wait to deflower you any longer." She led me to her bedroom and directed me to sit on the edge of the bed. She unbuttoned her blouse and revealed a couture bra holding pert titties. She unzipped her jeans and skillfully shimmied them down over her heels. You've got to admire a woman who can remove skinny jeans while wearing manolos and still look alluring while doing so, especially after 3 cocktails. Revealing a skimpy and matching G-string, she modelled it with a slow turn. "Do you like what you see?" she said, displaying the object of many a man and woman's desire. What an arse! Trim, sculpted and firm, I could have been quite content just watching it roll on the covers in an early morning light. Very much so. The air in the room suddenly became very heavy with the enormity of what I was about to do. I was at the point of no return. A freight train could have hurtled through the front door and I still wouldn't have stopped. "I'm not convinced. Show me how much you like it," she teased. My hands wandered to my sopping wet pussy and I inserted a finger. "That's more like it. You've been dying to do that, haven't you?" I moaned while fingering myself as she removed her bra. Her nipples are big, dark, and so very hard. They are the kind of nipples that beckon the good sucking on, I imagined. Just wearing her G-strings and heels, she strutted over to me. "Would you like to do the honours?" she teased, tugging on the lacy G-string. She turned round with her firm arse facing me, and I took that moment to remove my very first pair of women's panties. Her arse swayed from side to side as a G-string fell to the floor. As she turned to face me and gently lifted my chin, she leant over and kissed me tenderly. She was like an angel and a dirty devil all rolled into one magnificent body. She lowered to her knees and unbuttoned my shirt. She released my full breast from her sheer black bra and said, "My, what beauties you have." She cupped my ample breast and circled my nipple slowly and sensuously with her tongue. Pulling me to my feet, she undid my skirt and let it and my panties fall to the floor. She pointed to the full-length mirror opposite us. "Have you ever seen a more beautiful image?" I admired our reflections. Her lean and tan legs balanced on stilettos and the G-string still circled her tapered ankle, while an inked image of an ivy creeper curled around her shin from the base of her heel. I had to admit, I looked sexy in nothing but a pair of high heels. But she made me look even better, complimented me positively. She spun me around to face the mirror and I said nicely, "Just look at you, you're a vision." She ran her hands over my body and whispered into my ear, "I can't wait to fuck you a moment longer." She motioned me to the bed and pushed me onto my back gently. She kissed me passionately as her fingers were once again between my legs. She moved her hot mouth down my body, first to my nipples and then down until she was where I wanted her all along. She kissed my inner thigh and moving closer to her target, she grasped my legs behind my knees and opened me wide open. The first flick of her tongue on my clit sent instant butterflies to my stomach. Using one of her hands, she opened me further and took my clit into her mouth, sucking it hard and giving me the first of many orgasms. "Yum, you're delicious," she said. She thrusted her finger in and out slowly and tantalizingly and then faster, bringing me to a climax again. She straddled me and I leant over to the bedside table. Pulling open the drawer, she rummaged inside and pulled out 2 vibrators of similar size, but differently coloured and ribbed. As she leant over, her breast dangled in front of me, and I took one of her nipples into my mouth, goring on her succulence. With her legs on either side of me, I could feel her wetness on my stomach as I fondled between her legs. She straightened up and opened her legs. She straightened up and opened her legs wide, allowing me to admire her tight little cunt. "You're so pretty and neat," I remarked. "I won't be for long," she laughed. Taking my hand, she directed me to her moist, posy lips as we stroked one another. With my other hand, I opened her lips up and rubbed her clit fast. She rocked back and forth. She moaned with her head thrown back. What a sight. I heard the buzz of a vibrator. It was one of those toys that resembles an egg. It had remote control that ought to come with a health warning for those with the heart problems. I have a similar one at home and know just how intense the orgasm can be. I held the egg to her clit as she climaxed. Her whole pussy pulsated, causing her body to buck in response. Only moments before she had been in complete control, and now she was a quivering mess as she fell beside me. My tongue lapped up her juice in no time, and I savoured every drop of her. As she lay completely exposed to me, I gazed up to see her back arched and nipples large and erect. I took a mental photograph so I'd never forget that magnificent view, and filed it onto the great mind-blowing experiences file. I placed the toy against her hole, and once again brought her to heaven and back again countless times. I climbed on top of her face and covered her mouth with my cunt, while developing her pussy in return. Armed with a vibrator each, we remained in this position till our pussies were so engorged, the chances were that we were going to be swollen for many enjoyable hours afterwards. As I dressed, feeling sheepish once again, she draped herself across the bed with an inner glow that can only come from hours of climaxing. She said, "Can I see you again?" "What about the girlfriend?" I inquired. "Girlfriend? Oh," I lied, "I just wanted to see your response." She laughed lightly. "And I have to say your response was truly remarkable." "In that case, the answer is yes." I leaned over to kiss her delicious lips. "But I'm leaving you some homework." "Oh, I want you to read that book, and I will be testing you on it for our next rendezvous." We smiled at each other knowingly. "This could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship," she quoted Bogart from Casablanca. After more lingering looks, she added, "By the way, you can take the lift down." "I thought it wasn't working." Through a giggle, she laughed. "I just wanted to watch your arse as you climbed up the stairs." Our laughter sealed the deal, and as indeed it was the beginning of a beautiful friendship, and still is today. Okay, so that's the Bookstore from my collection of erotic stories ebook. It's on Amazon. I'll post a link down below, and the book is called Swingtown and Other Stories, and I'll be reading other stories from that. And yeah, that's about it. I'll see you again soon with another story. Thank you, bye.